Alrighty, good morning everybody. Coming into a busy end of the week here. Lots of news, lots of Fed speak. We got non-farm payroll on Friday. Let's go ahead and jump into the charts this morning and see what they have to say. We got a little Van Halen 5150 going on. We just reached 5150 in the market just a couple days ago. So this is just a little tribute to that. Let's go ahead and take a look at what happened here yesterday. All right, so remember, coming into the open here, we were coming into this first pocket that was really important line in the sand for our bullish bias. If the bulls could hold above here, we were expecting that breakout above the hopeful and then back up through the previous daily low. If we couldn't hold above this area, and more specifically above the top end of that and the bottom end of that area, then we were expecting a push down into this next pocket, which was going to be 50.87 to 50.89. And I warned you that if the bulls could not defend 87 to 89, good target was going to be right on down to the 50.67 half area. So that was kind of what we laid out. And why did I just do that? That's what we laid out as we came into the open. Market came right on down to the top end of that pocket, 09. Could not get through. Held, I believe, with less than 2 points, and then tried to go ahead and pop out. Now, usually what we see in these scenarios, or very often, we see these type of pops, and then we come right into hopeful, and that's where the rotation happens. Unfortunately, we missed it by a couple points there, essentially holding the VWAP, and then we got the chug right on down through this first major area of support. They did try to hold right around 50% of the previous day, the bottom end of that pocket, and as you can see, no dice on that, and they just went ahead and continued to rally to the downside. There's your beautiful tag off the 200 as we're continuing to sell off. And then we came in right into that pocket. And when I was looking at the charts before I put this on yesterday morning, I liked 87, I liked 89. It just so happened that they were so close together, I figured we'll call this a pocket. And you guys know that I'm typically leaning on the top end of those pockets and the bottom end of those pockets. They just so happen to bounce to the tick right off of that area. So we got the bounce, could not get through the 200, basically a retest of that low, and then we started to come down and test into the bottom end. Now, it got a little tricky in here because it started to kind of go sideways for, about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours, until we finally got the hold below. And notice what happened. We were holding above the top end of the zone, and then once the price got down through it, we then held the bottom end, the 87 level, as a resistance and basically the 200 again. And then you got a continuation to the downside here coming into, and remember, in the news report I said if we cannot hold above here, a great short target is going to be right to 67.5, one of our new roadmap levels. And sure enough, that was, for all intents and purposes, the low of the day. They came down just a couple of points through it. Luckily, if you were taking profit here, you basically nailed the low of the day. And then we got this little attempt by the bulls to recover from the sell-off. Lots of aggressive opportunities off the FMA on the downside and the upside, and some beautiful, nearly to the tick holds off the levels that we rely on nearly every single day. So some really good opportunities if you ask me. We did have an expectation of a continuation for the bears. And the first clue was getting through that pocket. Second clue was getting through the second pocket here. And even if you were waiting for the market to get through the pocket from 87 to 89, you still had the last couple hours of the day some beautiful opportunities to the short side, right into our target. And then if you notice that we were starting to get one of those end of the day rallies, you got an opportunity to go in and jump in on the bullish side of things. Now notice that we came nearly right back to one of our new roadmap levels up there around 92. And if you notice, actually through the chop here, 92 is a very, very relevant level of support here, where they were holding above it, got kind of down below it, and then they held above it, and then they held below it, and then they held above it, right? So there's something very relevant going on right in that area. Even once they sold off below it, they got back up, still holding above it here, holding above it, and then finally the breakdown where we come up from the back end and then continue to sell off from there. So even though these levels are so close together, they still become extremely important, and there's a reason we have them on there. I know sometimes it gets busy when we have levels within a couple points and ticks of each other, but we still see day in, day out some of the most notable rotations throughout all this chop right off that level nearly to the tick. So pretty good stuff if you ask me. That brought us here into the overnight session. Again, this nice bullish rally at the end of the day. And what do you know? In the overnight session, they held the 200 there on the pullback. They held VWAP on that pullback, and then they got this nice rip up. Now, we didn't have the Hopel on there at the time when this pullback happened, but we got this nice rip up, basically pulling back to hold around 50% of the day before, 50% of yesterday, and then again trying to come up right up through one of our other new roadmap levels up in this area, right by 50% of last week. And interestingly enough, the biggest pullback in this overnight session was right around 51.05. So we got that pullback from there, and now we're getting this continuation to the upside coming into the open right now. So that concludes our review for yesterday and the overnight session. Let's go ahead and jump up to those higher time frames and see what they have to say for this morning.